The rain came down in sheets over the small town of Cedar Falls, Wisconsin, turning the streets into rivers of grey water that rushed toward the storm drains. It was the kind of October evening that made people hurry home, pull their curtains closed, and thank God they weren't outside. The sky had been dark since 4 in the afternoon, and now, at 7:30, it felt like the middle of the night. Fire Station 12 sat at the corner of Main Street and Riverside Drive, its red brick facade glistening under the amber glow of the streetlights. Inside, the crew of Engine Company 12 was settling into what they expected would be a quiet evening. The weather had kept most people indoors, and the scanner had been silent for hours. Captain Marcus Thompson stood at the window of the common room, watching the rain streak down the glass. At 52, he had seen more than his share of storms, both literal and figurative. His salt and pepper hair was cropped close to his head, and the lines around his eyes spoke of decades spent running into situations that made other people run away. He held a mug of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago, but he didn't seem to notice. Behind him, the rest of the crew was scattered around the room. Jake Morrison, 28, and the youngest member of the team, was sprawled on the worn leather couch, scrolling through his phone. His turnout gear hung on the rack by the door, ready to be thrown on at a moment's notice. Next to him, Eddie Ramirez was working on a crossword puzzle, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. At 45, Eddie was the unofficial father figure of the group, the one everyone went to when they needed advice or just someone to listen. In the kitchen area, Lieutenant Sarah Chen was preparing dinner. At 36, she was the only woman on the shift, a fact that had never seemed to matter to anyone at Station 12. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had learned to make the most of every minute, stirring a pot of chili while simultaneously checking her phone for messages from her teenage daughter. And then there was Tommy Okonkwo, the newest member of the crew. At 24, he was still learning the ropes, still wide-eyed at the things they saw on calls. He sat at the table near Sarah, watching her cook and asking questions about everything from the recipe to the department's protocols. The station felt like home to all of them. They spent more time here than they did in their own houses, and over the years they had become more than colleagues. They were family. Marcus turned away from the window and was about to suggest they eat when the front door of the station burst open with such force that it slammed against the wall. The sound made everyone freeze. A girl stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the rain. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old, though it was hard to tell with the way she was hunched over, clutching her left arm. Her clothes were soaked through, plastered to her thin frame, and her brown hair hung in wet tangles around her face, but it was her eyes that made Marcus's blood run cold. They were wide with terror, the kind of fear that comes from something far worse than a storm. She opened her mouth, and the words that came out would haunt everyone in that room for the rest of their lives. "Please help me, he's going to do it again. Please, you have to help me." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus was across the room in 3 long strides, dropping to one knee in front of the girl. His voice was calm and steady, the voice he used when people were panicking and needed someone to be their anchor. "It's okay, sweetheart, you're safe now. I'm Captain Thompson. Can you tell me your name?" The girl was shaking so hard that Marcus could hear her teeth chattering. Up close, he could see the bruise forming on her left cheek, the angry red marks on her arm where someone had grabbed her too hard. His jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. "Mia," she stammered, "Mia Patterson." Sarah was already there with a blanket, wrapping it around the girl's shoulders. Eddie had moved to the door, looking out into the rain, as if expecting someone to follow her. Jake was on his feet, his phone forgotten, his young face pale with shock. "Mia, I need you to listen to me very carefully," Marcus said. "You're safe here, nobody is going to hurt you. But I need you to tell me what happened. Who did this to you?" Mia's eyes darted to the door, then back to Marcus. Her voice came out in a whisper so quiet that he had to lean in to hear her. "My mom's boyfriend, his name is Derek. He He hits us. He hits my mom and he hits me. But tonight was different. Tonight he said he was going to teach me a real lesson. He had this look in his eyes and I ran. I didn't know where else to go. I saw the fire station and I just ran. Sarah's hand tightened on Mia's shoulder. Her own jaw was set in a hard line, and Marcus could see the anger burning in her eyes. But her voice was gentle when she spoke. "You did the right thing, Mia. You were so brave to come here. We are going to help you, okay?" Marcus stood up and turned to his crew. His voice was low but firm. "Jake, call 911 and get the police here. Tell them we have a possible child abuse situation and we need officers on scene immediately. Eddie, I need you to get the first aid kit. Tommy, make sure the bay doors are secured. I don't want anyone coming in here uninvited." Everyone moved at once, their training taking over. Jake was already on the phone, his voice professional despite the way his hands were shaking. Eddie jogged toward the supply room. Tommy headed for the bay doors. Marcus turned back to Mia, who was watching everything with those terrified eyes. "Mia, is your mom still at home with this man?" Mia nodded, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She tried to stop him. She tried to get between us, but he pushed her down. She hit her head on the coffee table. "She wasn't moving when I left. I wanted to help her, but I was so scared." Sarah pulled the girl into a hug, and Mia finally broke. The sobs that came out of her were raw and ragged, the sounds of a child who had been holding in her fear for far too long. Marcus felt something shift inside him. He had been a firefighter for almost 30 years, and he had seen the worst that humanity had to offer. He had pulled bodies from car wrecks, carried children out of burning buildings, held the hands of people as they took their last breaths. But there was something about this that cut deeper than all of that. Maybe it was because Mia reminded him of his own daughter, now grown and living across the country. Maybe it was because he could see the innocence being stripped away from this child right before his eyes. Or maybe it was because he knew with absolute certainty that he was not going to let anyone hurt this girl again. "Eddie, where's that first aid kit?" Eddie appeared with the kit and knelt down beside Sarah and Mia. His movements were gentle as he examined the bruise on her cheek and the marks on her arm. "Nothing's broken," he said quietly to Marcus. "But these bruises, some of them aren't fresh. This has been going on for a while." Marcus nodded grimly. He had suspected as much. Jake hung up the phone and walked over. "Police are on their way. They're also sending units to the address Mia gave us. Her mom, they're going to check on her too." "Good." Marcus looked at the young firefighter. "How are you holding up?" Jake's face was still pale, but there was a new hardness in his eyes. "I'm fine, Cap. I've never seen anything like this before. Who does this to a kid?" "Monsters," Sarah said flatly, still holding Mia. "Monsters who look like regular people." The minutes ticked by slowly as they waited for the police. Sarah had managed to get Mia to drink some hot chocolate, and the girl's shaking had subsided a little, though she still flinched at every sound. Tommy had taken up a position by the front door, watching the street through the glass, his young face set in determination. Marcus stood apart from the group, thinking. He had done everything by the book. He had called the police, secured the station, provided first aid. But something was gnawing at him, a feeling he couldn't shake. And then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It was dispatch. "Captain Thompson." The voice on the other end was tense. "Captain, we've got a situation. A man showed up at the police station looking for a missing child. He's claiming to be the girl's stepfather. He's saying she ran away and he's worried about her. He's headed your way." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. "Who told him she was here?" "Nobody, Captain. But he's been driving around town looking for her. Someone must have seen her come in." Marcus hung up and turned to his crew. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "We're about to have company. Sarah, take Mia to the back. The rest of you with me." "What's happening?" Mia's voice was high with panic. "Is he coming? Please don't let him take me, please." Sarah was already on her feet, guiding Mia toward the back of the station. "Nobody is taking you anywhere, sweetheart. I promise." Marcus walked to the front of the station with Eddie, Jake, and Tommy falling in behind him. Through the glass doors, he could see headlights cutting through the rain, growing closer. A truck pulled into the parking lot, its engine roaring. A man got out. He was big, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and thick arms. His face was red with anger, and even from this distance Marcus could see the way his hands were clenched into fists. Derek Lawson had arrived. He strode toward the station entrance, his boots splashing through the puddles. When he reached the doors, he tried to pull them open, but Tommy had locked them. Derek's face contorted with rage. "Open these doors," he shouted, his voice muffled by the glass. "I know she's in there, that's my daughter, and I have every right to take her home." Marcus stepped forward close enough to the glass that Derek could see his face clearly. "I'm Captain Marcus Thompson of Cedar Falls Fire Department. The police have been called, and they're on their way. I'm going to have to ask you to step back and wait for them to arrive." Derek slammed his palm against the glass. "I don't need to wait for anybody. That girl is mine, and she's coming home with me tonight." "She's not your daughter," Marcus said evenly. "She's your girlfriend's daughter. And from what I can see, she's been hurt. So you're going to stand right there and wait for the police, or I'm going to have a very serious problem with you." Derek's eyes narrowed. "You think I'm scared of you? You're just a firefighter. You don't have any authority here." "Maybe not," Eddie said, stepping up beside Marcus, "but there are 5 of us and 1 of you, and I promise you, none of us are going to let you anywhere near that little girl." Derek looked at the line of firefighters standing behind the glass. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. Then his face twisted into an ugly smile. "Fine, I'll wait for the cops. And when they get here, they're going to see that this is all a misunderstanding. That girl has always been dramatic. Makes up stories for attention." Marcus said nothing. He just stood there, arms crossed over his chest, watching. The police arrived 7 minutes later. 2 squad cars pulled into the parking lot, their lights flashing red and blue against the wet pavement. Officers stepped out, hands on their belts, eyes taking in the scene. Derek immediately turned to them, his demeanor shifting. He was all concerned now, all worried, stepfather. "Officers, thank God you're here. My girlfriend's daughter ran off, and I've been looking everywhere for her. I just want to make sure she's safe." One of the officers, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression, looked from Derek to the fire station. "Sir, I'm Officer Patricia Reyes. We received a call about a possible child abuse situation. The girl in question claims that you assaulted her." Derek's face went red again. "That's ridiculous. I've never laid a hand on that kid. She's troubled. She does this for attention." "Then you won't mind if we talk to her," Officer Reyes said. "It wasn't a question." She walked toward the station, and Marcus unlocked the door to let her in. He led her to the back room, where Sarah was sitting with Mia. The girl looked up when they entered, and the terror on her face when she saw the police was heartbreaking. "It's okay, Mia," Sarah said softly. "This officer is here to help you." Officer Reyes crouched down so she was at eye level with the girl. Her voice was gentle but professional. "Mia, my name is Officer Reyes. I need to ask you some questions, okay? Can you tell me what happened tonight?" Mia looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. Then she took a deep breath and began to talk. She told the officer everything, about the months of abuse, about Derek's temper, the way he would explode over nothing, about the times he had hit her mother and the times he had hit her, about tonight when he had come home drunk and angry, when he had grabbed her by the arm and dragged her into the hallway, when he had raised his fist and told her he was going to teach her to respect him, and about her mother, lying unconscious on the floor as Mia fled into the rain. By the time she finished, Officer Reyes's face was grim. She stood up and turned to Marcus. "We're taking him in for questioning, and we're sending units to the residence immediately." "What about her mother?" Mia asked, her voice breaking. "Is my mom okay?" Officer Reyes hesitated. "We're going to find out, sweetheart, I promise." She walked out of the room, and Marcus followed her to the front of the station. Outside, Derek was standing between the 2 squad cars, his arms crossed, still playing the role of the concerned parent. But when he saw Officer Reyes's expression, something changed in his face. Derek Lawson, you're being detained for questioning in connection with assault charges. Please put your hands behind your back. Derek's mask finally slipped. This is insane. That kid is lying. She's always been a liar. The other officers moved in, and within seconds, Derek was in handcuffs. He struggled and shouted, but they got him into the back of one of the squad cars. As the door closed behind him, Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. But it wasn't over yet. Officer Reyes's radio crackled. She listened, her expression growing more serious by the second. When she looked up at Marcus, there was something in her eyes that made his stomach drop. The units arrived at the residence. Mia's mother is alive, but she's hurt. They're transporting her to Cedar Falls General. Marcus nodded slowly. What about the girl? What happens to her now? Officer Reyes sighed. Child Protective Services is on their way. She'll be placed in emergency foster care until we can figure out a more permanent solution. Foster care? Marcus repeated. The words left a bitter taste in his mouth. She just escaped from a nightmare, and you're going to put her in the system. It's the protocol, Captain. I don't like it any more than you do, but we don't have another option right now. Marcus looked through the glass at the back room, where Sarah was still sitting with Mia. The girl had her knees pulled up to her chest, the blanket wrapped tight around her, looking so small and so lost. He thought about his own daughter, about the years he had spent protecting her, providing for her, making sure she never had to feel the kind of fear that Mia was feeling right now. And he made a decision. Give me a few minutes before you call CPS. Officer Reyes raised an eyebrow. Captain, just a few minutes, please. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Fine, but I can't wait forever. Marcus walked back to the crew room. His team was gathered there, watching him, waiting to see what would happen next. He looked at each of them in turn. Jake, still pale but steady. Eddie, his crossword puzzle forgotten. Tommy, young and determined. And Sarah, who had not left Mia's side since the girl arrived. I need to make a phone call, Marcus said, and then we need to talk, all of us. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. It rang twice before someone picked up. Marcus, it's late. Is everything okay? Hey, Linda, I know it's late and I'm sorry, but something happened tonight and I need to talk to you. It's important. There was a pause on the other end. Linda Thompson had been married to Marcus for 25 years. She knew the sound of his voice when something was weighing on him. Tell me what happened. So he did. He told her about Mia, about the bruises, about the look in her eyes when she burst through those doors. He told her about Derek, about the confrontation, about the arrest. And he told her about what was going to happen next if someone didn't step in. When he finished, there was silence on the line. Then Linda spoke, her voice soft but certain. Bring her home, Marcus. Are you sure? This is a big thing. We don't know anything about this girl, about her situation. I know that a child needs help. I know that we have an empty room since Katie moved out, and I know that you wouldn't have called me if you didn't already know what the right thing to do is. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. I love you, Linda. I love you too. Now go take care of that little girl. I'll get the guest room ready. He hung up and turned to his crew. They were all watching him, and he could see the question in their eyes. Sarah, can you bring Mia out here? I need to talk to her. Sarah disappeared into the back room and returned a moment later with Mia. The girl's eyes were red from crying, but she looked a little steadier than before. Sarah guided her to a chair and sat down next to her. Marcus pulled up a chair of his own and sat across from Mia. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his voice gentle. Mia, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly. Do you have any family? Anyone who could take care of you while your mom is in the hospital? Mia shook her head slowly. My grandma died 2 years ago. My dad, I don't know where he is. He left when I was little. Marcus nodded. He had expected as much. Here's the thing, Mia. The police are going to have to call Child Protective Services. They're going to want to put you in foster care, at least for now. But I have another idea if you're okay with it. Mia looked up at him, her eyes wide and uncertain. My wife and I, we have a big house. Our daughter moved out a few years ago and we have an empty room. If you want, you could stay with us. Just until your mum gets better and we can figure out what happens next. No pressure. If you'd rather go with CPS, I understand, but I want you to know that you have options." For a long moment, Mia just stared at him. Then her lip trembled and tears began to slide down her cheeks again. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that for me? You don't even know me." Marcus smiled softly. "Because that's what we do, Mia. We help people. It's not just our job, it's who we are. And right now, you need help." Mia looked around the room at the other firefighters. Jake gave her an encouraging nod. Eddie smiled warmly. Tommy stood quietly, but his eyes were kind, and Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "We're all here for you, sweetheart," Sarah said. "Whatever you decide." Mia turned back to Marcus. Her voice was small, but there was a flicker of hope in it that hadn't been there before. "Okay, I'll stay with you, if that's really okay." Marcus stood up and held out his hand. "It's really okay. Let's go talk to Officer Reyes." The conversation with CPS took longer than Marcus had hoped. There were forms to fill out, background checks to initiate, protocols to follow. But Officer Reyes went to bat for him, explaining the situation and advocating for an emergency placement with the Thompson family. By the time everything was sorted out, it was almost midnight. Marcus drove Mia home through streets that had finally stopped running with rain. The clouds were beginning to break up, and here and there, stars peeked through. Mia sat in the passenger seat, the blanket still wrapped around her shoulders, watching the town go by. "Captain Thompson," she said quietly. "You can call me Marcus, or even Mark if you want." "Marcus." She paused, as if testing the name. "Thank you. I know I already said it, but thank you. When I ran out of the house tonight, I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. And then I saw the fire station, and I thought maybe someone there could help. I didn't know if anyone would believe me, or if they would just send me back." Marcus kept his eyes on the road, but his hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Mia, I want you to listen to me very carefully. What happened to you was not your fault, none of it, and anyone who tells you otherwise is wrong. You were brave to run, you were brave to ask for help, and you're brave right now, letting me drive you to a stranger's house in the middle of the night." "You don't feel like a stranger," Mia said softly. "You feel like, I don't know, like someone I can trust." They pulled into the driveway of a modest two-story house on a tree-lined street. The porch light was on, and Marcus could see Linda's silhouette through the front window. "That's my wife, Linda. She's been looking forward to meeting you." Mia took a deep breath. "I'm scared." "That's okay. It's okay to be scared. But you're not alone anymore, Mia. Whatever happens next, you're not alone." They got out of the truck and walked up the front path. Before they could reach the porch, the front door opened and Linda Thompson stepped out. She was a warm-looking woman in her early 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes. She took one look at Mia and opened her arms. "Welcome home, sweetheart." Mia hesitated for just a moment. Then she walked into Linda's embrace and held on like her life depended on it. Marcus watched them, his throat tight. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if Mia's mother would recover, or what would happen with the legal situation, or how long Mia would need to stay with them. But in that moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was that a scared little girl had found safety, and that was enough. The first week was the hardest. Mia barely spoke, barely ate, barely left the guest room that Linda had transformed into a cozy sanctuary with soft blankets and warm colors. She had nightmares every night, waking up screaming, and Linda would sit with her for hours, rubbing her back and telling her she was safe. Marcus called in favors with friends in the department to check on the investigation. Derek Lawson had been formally charged with assault and child endangerment. He was being held without bail, given his history of violence that had come to light once the police started digging. Mia's mother, Jennifer, was recovering at Cedar Falls General. She had suffered a concussion and a broken wrist, but she was expected to make a full recovery. The doctors said she could have visitors by the end of the week. Mia didn't know what to feel about that. She loved her mother. She knew her mother loved her too, but she also knew that her mother had stayed with Derek despite everything. She had made excuses for him, had told Mia to try harder, to be quieter, to not provoke him. And part of Mia couldn't help but wonder if her mother would choose Derek again, even after all of this. On the 6th day, Linda knocked gently on Mia's door. "Sweetheart, Sarah's here to see you." Mia sat up in bed, surprised. She hadn't expected any of the firefighters to come by. Sarah Chen walked into the room with a smile on her face and a bag in her hand. "Hey, kiddo. I hope it's okay that I stopped by. I brought some stuff for you." She sat down on the edge of the bed and opened the bag. Inside were books, art supplies, and a stuffed animal that was a Dalmatian wearing a tiny firefighter helmet. The guys at the station all chipped in. Tommy picked out the Dalmatian. He said every junior firefighter needs a mascot. Mia reached out and took the stuffed animal, holding it close. "Junior firefighter!" Sarah grinned. "Well, you're practically one of us now. You showed more courage that night than most people show in their entire lives. That earns you honorary status." Mia felt something warm bloom in her chest. It was an unfamiliar feeling, one she hadn't experienced in a long time. It took her a moment to recognize it. "Hope, how is everyone at the station?" she asked. "They're good. Jake's been bugging me about when he can come visit. Eddie says to tell you that he finally finished that crossword puzzle that was driving him crazy. And Tommy, well, Tommy's been practicing his cooking because he wants to make you dinner sometime. Fair warning, his skills are questionable." Mia actually laughed at that. It was a small, tentative sound, but it was real. Sarah's expression grew more serious. "Mia, I also wanted to talk to you about something. Your mom is going to be released from the hospital in a few days. She's been asking about you. She wants to see you." The warm feeling in Mia's chest flickered. I don't know if I'm ready for that." "That's okay. You don't have to do anything you're not ready for. But I want you to know that whatever you decide, we're all here for you. Marcus, Linda, me, all of us. You're not alone in this." Mia nodded slowly. She hugged the Dalmatian tighter. "Can I ask you something, Sarah?" "Of course." "Why do you do it? Being a firefighter, I mean. Isn't it scary, running into burning buildings and stuff?" Sarah considered the question. "It is scary sometimes. But the thing is, fear doesn't go away when you become a firefighter. You just learn to work with it. You learn that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway." She reached out and brushed a strand of hair from Mia's face. "Kind of like what you did that night. You were terrified, but you ran for help anyway. That takes real courage." Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked another question, one that had been weighing on her for days. "Do you think my mom will be mad at me for telling the police what happened?" Sarah's eyes softened. "I think your mom is going to be grateful that you're safe, and I think deep down she knows that you did the right thing. Sometimes people get stuck in bad situations and they can't see a way out. Sometimes it takes someone else to break the cycle. I don't want to see her if she's going to take his side again. I understand, and you have every right to set that boundary, but maybe this was the wake-up call she needed. Maybe losing you, even for a few days, made her realize what really matters." Mia didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. Sarah stood up and pulled something else out of the bag. It was a photo, slightly crumpled, printed on regular paper. "The guys wanted you to have this. It's from last year's charity car wash. Figured you might like to see what we look like when we're not in uniform." Mia took the photo and looked at it. There were the 5 members of Engine Company 12, soaking wet and covered in soap suds, grinning at the camera like they didn't have a care in the world. Marcus was in the middle, his serious demeanor completely gone, replaced by a wide smile that made him look 10 years younger. "You can put it on your wall if you want," Sarah said. "Just a reminder that there are people out there who care about you." After Sarah left, Mia sat alone in her room for a long time. She looked at the photo, at the stuffed Dalmatian, at the art supplies spread out on the desk. She thought about what Sarah had said about courage, about fear, about doing what needed to be done. And for the first time, in as long as she could remember, she let herself believe that things might actually get better. 3 days later, Mia agreed to visit her mother in the hospital. Linda drove her, and Marcus came along for support. The drive to Cedar Falls General took about 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Mia sat in the back seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her heart pounding. The hospital was a squat brick building on the east side of town, its windows reflecting the grey autumn sky. They parked in the visitor lot and walked inside, past the front desk, down a long corridor that smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. Jennifer Patterson was in room 214. When they reached the door, Mia stopped. "I don't know if I can do this." Marcus crouched down, so he was at her eye level, the same way he had that first night at the fire station. "You can do this, Mia, and if it gets too hard, we'll leave. No questions asked, okay?" Mia nodded slowly. She took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and pushed open the door. Her mother was sitting up in bed, propped against a pile of pillows. Her face was pale, and there was a bandage on her forehead where she had hit the coffee table. Her left arm was in a cast, resting on a pillow beside her. But her eyes were clear and focused, and when she saw Mia, they filled with tears. "Baby." Mia stood frozen in the doorway. 1,000 emotions warred inside her: anger, fear, relief, sorrow, love, resentment. It was too much all at once, and she didn't know what to do with any of it. "Mom." Jennifer held out her good arm. "Please, come here, please." Mia walked slowly across the room. She stopped at the edge of the bed, looking down at her mother, this woman who had brought her into the world and then failed to protect her from the monster who had invaded their home. "Why?" The word came out hoarse, barely a whisper. "Why didn't you stop him? Why did you let him hurt us?" Jennifer's face crumpled. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and her voice shook when she spoke. "I was scared, baby. I was so scared. I thought if I just kept the peace, if I just made him happy, things would get better. But they never did. They only got worse. And I was so wrapped up in my own fear that I couldn't see what I was doing to you. You told me to be quiet. You told me not to make him angry. I know, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I failed you, Mia. I failed you as a mother, and I am so, so sorry." Mia felt the tears building behind her own eyes. She had wanted to stay strong, to keep her walls up, to protect herself from getting hurt again. But seeing her mother like this, broken and repentant, something inside her began to crack. "I ran to the fire station," she said. "Did they tell you that? I ran through the rain, and these firefighters, they helped me, they protected me. They didn't even know me, and they protected me." Jennifer nodded, her face wet with tears. "I know. The police told me. They said a man named Marcus Thompson took you in, that he and his wife have been taking care of you." Mia looked back at Marcus and Linda, who were standing quietly by the door. "They're good people, Mom. They made me feel safe." "I'm glad. I'm so glad you found them." Jennifer took a shaky breath. "Mia, I need you to know something. Derek is going to prison. What he did to us, it's over. He's never going to hurt us again." "But what about next time? What if you find someone else like him?" Jennifer closed her eyes. When she opened them again, there was something different in them, something resolute. "I'm getting help, baby. The hospital has a social worker. She's been talking to me about domestic violence, about the patterns, about why I stayed. I'm going to therapy. I'm going to learn how to be stronger, how to make better choices. For you." "How do I know you mean it? How do I know you won't just go back to the way things were?" Jennifer reached out and took Mia's hand. Her grip was weak, but her gaze was steady. "I can't promise you I'll never make another mistake. I wish I could, but I can't. But I can promise you that I'm going to try. Every single day, I'm going to try to be the mother you deserve. And I'm going to understand if you need time before you can trust me again. I'm going to earn that trust back, no matter how long it takes." Mia stood there, her mother's hand in hers, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on her shoulders. She thought about the fire station, about Marcus and Linda, about Sarah and the other firefighters who had become her unexpected guardians. She thought about the courage it had taken to run, to ask for help, to let herself believe that things could be different. And she made a decision. I'm not ready to come home yet. I need more time. Jennifer's face flickered with pain, but she nodded. I understand. Take all the time you need. But I don't want to lose you, Mom. I don't want to stop being your daughter. You will never stop being my daughter. Never. No matter what happens. Mia finally let the tears fall. She leaned forward and hugged her mother, careful not to jostle her injured arm. Jennifer held her as best she could, and for a moment, despite everything, they were just a mother and daughter, holding on to each other in the wreckage of their lives. The weeks that followed were filled with small steps forward and occasional steps back. Mia continued to stay with the Thompsons, settling into a routine that brought structure and stability to her days. She started attending Cedar Falls Middle School, where Linda had enrolled her with the help of the social workers. It was awkward at first, being the new kid in the middle of the semester, but she found that having something to focus on helped keep her mind off the darker things. The Firefighters of Engine Company 12 became regular fixtures in her life. Jake stopped by one afternoon with a video game console that he set up in the guest room, insisting that she needed proper entertainment. Eddie came over for dinner every Wednesday, bringing his wife Maria, who made the best tamales Mia had ever tasted. Tommy followed through on his promise to cook for her, and while the spaghetti was a little overcooked and the sauce came from a jar, Mia ate every bite and told him it was delicious. And Sarah became something like an older sister, dropping by whenever she could, taking Mia out for ice cream and to the movies, talking to her about everything and nothing. She never pushed, never pried, but she was always there when Mia needed her. Mia visited her mother in the hospital twice more before Jennifer was released. The conversations were hard, sometimes painful, but each one felt like progress. Jennifer was true to her word. She was going to therapy, attending support groups, working with a domestic violence counselor. The change wasn't instant, but it was real. When Jennifer was finally discharged, she didn't go back to the old apartment. She couldn't. Too many bad memories. Instead, she moved into a small rental house on the other side of town, a place with bright windows and a garden out back. It wasn't much, but it was a fresh start. Mia helped her move in. They spent a Saturday afternoon unpacking boxes, putting up curtains, arranging furniture. It felt strange, being in a new space that didn't carry the weight of the past. Strange, but good. I was thinking, Jennifer said as they took a break on the back porch, maybe next week you could come stay with me for a night. Just one night to see how it feels, if you want. Mia looked out at the garden, at the bare flower beds waiting for spring. Maybe, I'll think about it. Jennifer smiled. That's enough for now. The trial came faster than anyone expected. Derek Lawson's public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Derek refused. He was convinced he could talk his way out of it, that he could charm a jury the same way he had charmed Jennifer all those years ago. He was wrong. Mia had to testify. It was the hardest thing she had ever done, walking into that courtroom, sitting in that witness chair, looking at Derek across the room as she told a room full of strangers what he had done to her. But she wasn't alone. Marcus sat in the gallery, right behind the prosecutor's table. Linda was next to him, holding his hand. Jake was there, and Eddie and Tommy and Sarah. They had all taken the day off to be there for her. When Mia walked up to the witness stand, her legs felt like jelly. But she looked out at that row of faces, at the people who had become her family, and she found her strength. She told the truth, all of it. The months of abuse, the fear, the night she ran, the bruises, the marks, the way Derek had looked at her when he said he was going to teach her a lesson. Derek's defense attorney tried to discredit her. He called her dramatic, attention-seeking, a troubled child with a history of lying. But Mia didn't waver. She answered every question calmly, clearly, with the steady determination of someone who had already survived the worst. When she stepped down from the stand, Sarah was waiting for her at the back of the courtroom. She pulled Mia into a hug. "You did amazing, kiddo. I'm so proud of you." The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They found Derek Lawson guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. When the verdict was read, Mia felt something release inside her. A knot that had been there for so long, she had forgotten what it felt like to not have it. She looked at her mother, who was sitting a few rows away, tears streaming down her face. Their eyes met, and for the first time in a long time, Mia saw something in her mother's eyes that matched what she was feeling in her own heart. Relief and the tentative, fragile beginnings of freedom. After the trial, things began to settle into a new kind of normal. Mia started spending more time at her mother's house, first 1 night a week, then 2. Jennifer was doing well in therapy, and the relationship between them, while still healing, was growing stronger. But Mia didn't want to leave the Thompsons entirely. They had become too important to her, so they worked out an arrangement. Mia would live with her mother during the week and spend weekends with Marcus and Linda. It was unconventional, but it worked. On a Friday evening in early December, Mia sat in the common room of Fire Station 12. It had been almost 2 months since the night she had burst through those doors, and the place that had once felt like a refuge now felt like a second home. The station was decorated for the holidays. Jake had strung lights around the windows, and Eddie had brought in a small artificial tree that sat in the corner, covered in ornaments that the crew had collected over the years. Tommy was in the kitchen, attempting to make hot chocolate under Sarah's supervision, while Marcus sat in his usual spot by the window, though this time he was smiling. "So," Sarah said, settling into the chair next to Mia, "how's school going?" "Good, actually. I made a friend. Her name is Rosa. She's in my English class." "That's great. See, I told you things would get better." Mia smiled. "You did. I didn't believe you at the time, but you did." Jake wandered over, a ridiculous Christmas sweater stretching across his shoulders. "Hey, Mia, the guys and I were talking, and we wanted to give you something." He pulled a small box from behind his back and handed it to her. Mia looked at it, curious, then opened it. Inside was a badge. It was smaller than the official firefighter badges, but it was polished and real, and engraved on the front were the words, "Mia Patterson, Honorary Member, Engine Company 12. Mia stared at it, her throat tight. "We got it made special," Jake said. "Captain's idea, said you earned it." Mia looked up at Marcus, who had walked over to join them. "I don't know what to say." Marcus put a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to say anything. Just know that you'll always have a place here, no matter what." Mia stood up and hugged him, the badge clutched in her hand. Then she hugged Jake and Sarah and Eddie when he came over to see what the fuss was about, and even Tommy, who blushed and nearly dropped the tray of hot chocolate he was carrying. When she finally stepped back, she was laughing and crying at the same time. I never thought I'd have this. People who care, a family." Linda, who had arrived a few minutes earlier, walked over and put an arm around her. "You've always deserved it, sweetheart. You just needed to find your way to us." The evening stretched on, filled with laughter and stories, and too many cookies. At one point the alarm went off, and the crew had to rush out on a call, a minor kitchen fire across town. Mia watched them go, watched them throw on their gear with practiced efficiency, watched Marcus climb into the engine with the same calm determination he brought to everything. While they were gone, Linda and Mia sat in the common room, looking at the Christmas tree. "Linda, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Why did you and Marcus do this? Take me in, I mean. You didn't know me. You could have just let CPS handle it." Linda was quiet for a moment, her eyes soft in the glow of the Christmas lights. "Do you know what Marcus told me that night he called? He said there was a little girl at the station who needed help. He said she had the same look in her eyes that our Katie had when she was young and scared of thunderstorms. He said he couldn't just let her go into the system, not when we had the space and the love to give." "But you didn't even meet me." I didn't need to. I knew that if Marcus saw something in you, it was real. And when I opened that front door and saw you standing there, looking so lost and so brave at the same time, I knew we had made the right choice." Mia leaned against Linda's shoulder. "Thank you for everything. Thank you, Mia, for letting us be part of your story." The crew returned an hour later, smelling like smoke and grinning with the satisfaction of a job well done. The kitchen fire had been minor, just a grease pan left unattended, and everyone was safe. As the night wound down and it was time to head home, Mia paused at the door of the station. She looked back at the common room, at the lights and the tree and the people who had become her family. A little over 2 months ago, she had run through these doors screaming for help, terrified and alone. Now she was walking out with her head held high, surrounded by people who loved her. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Fairy tales didn't exist in the real world. Mia knew there would still be hard days ahead, still moments when the memories would creep back and the fear would try to take hold. But she also knew that she wasn't alone anymore. She had Marcus and Linda. She had Sarah and Jake and Eddie and Tommy. She had her mother, who was working every day to be better. She had herself, and the courage she had discovered she possessed. As she walked to the car with Linda, the first snowflakes of the season began to drift down from the dark sky. Mia tilted her face up to feel them land on her cheeks, cold and soft and clean. "Ready to go home?" Linda asked. Mia smiled. "Yeah, I'm ready." The months rolled by, and winter gave way to spring. The snow melted, the flowers bloomed, and Cedar Falls came alive with color. Mia finished her first year at the middle school with grades that surprised even her. She had discovered a love of writing, filling notebooks with stories about brave heroines who faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. Her relationship with her mother continued to grow. Jennifer had found a job at a local non-profit that worked with survivors of domestic violence, turning her own painful experiences into something that could help others. They had dinner together 3 times a week now, and while there were still awkward moments and difficult conversations, there was also laughter and warmth and the slow rebuilding of trust. On a Saturday in late May, the Thompson household was buzzing with activity. Katie, Marcus and Linda's daughter, had flown in from Denver for a surprise visit, and the house was filled with the kind of joyful chaos that comes from family reunions. Katie was 28, with her father's serious eyes and her mother's warm smile. She had been skeptical at first when her parents told her they had taken in a foster child, not skeptical of their intentions, but worried about how it would change the family dynamics she had known her whole life. Those worries had evaporated within the first hour of meeting Mia. "So," Katie said, settling onto the couch next to Mia, "Dad tells me you've been hanging out at the station, learning the ropes." Mia nodded eagerly. "Sarah's been teaching me stuff, not real firefighter stuff, obviously, but like first aid and how to stay calm in emergencies. She says I'm a natural. That doesn't surprise me. From what I hear, you showed a lot of composure that first night." Mia looked down at her hands. "I didn't feel composed. I felt terrified." "That's kind of the point, isn't it? Being brave when you're scared is way harder than being brave when you're not." They were interrupted by Marcus, who appeared in the doorway with a suspicious look on his face. "Why do I feel like you two are plotting something?" Katie grinned. "We're bonding, Dad. It's what sisters do." The word hung in the air. Sisters. Mia felt her heart swell. "Speaking of bonding," Marcus said, "the crew is doing a community event at the station tomorrow. Open house, fire truck rides for the kids, that kind of thing. Mia, they specifically requested your presence." "Really?" "Really. Jake said something about needing his junior firefighter to help out." Mia was on her feet before Marcus finished the sentence. The open house was a huge success. The station was packed with families from all over Cedar Falls, kids climbing on the trucks, parents asking questions about fire safety, volunteers handing out pamphlets and plastic firefighter helmets. Mia threw herself into the work. She helped Tommy set up the CPR demonstration station. She assisted Eddie in giving tours of the sleeping quarters and the kitchen. She even posed for photos with little kids who wanted to meet the junior firefighter they had heard about. At one point, she found herself standing next to Sarah, watching a group of children taking turns spraying the fire hose. "You know," Sarah said, "a year ago you couldn't have imagined any of this." Mia shook her head. "A year ago I was just trying to survive. I didn't think about the future because I didn't think I had one. And now?" Mia thought about it. She thought about school, about her writing, about the plans she had been making. She thought about her mother, about the progress they had made, about the possibility that their relationship could become something beautiful instead of something painful. "Now, I think about it all the time. I want to go to college. I want to be a writer or maybe a social worker like the woman who helped my mom. Or maybe—" She trailed off, suddenly shy. Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Maybe what?" "Maybe a firefighter like you." Sarah's face broke into a wide smile. "I think you'd be amazing at it, but you've got time, Mia. You've got all the time in the world." As the afternoon wore on and the crowds began to thin, Mia found herself alone in the common room. She stood at the window, looking out at the parking lot, at the families loading back into their cars, at the ordinary beauty of a spring day in a small town. The door opened behind her, and Marcus walked in. He stood beside her at the window, not saying anything, just sharing the view. "Captain," Mia said after a while, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come here that night? If I had gone somewhere else? Or if you hadn't been on duty?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "I try not to think about it. The what-ifs don't change anything. What matters is what did happen." "I know, but sometimes I can't help wondering. What if nobody had believed me? What if Derek had found me first? What if—" Marcus turned to face her. His expression was serious but kind. "Mia, I've been a firefighter for almost 30 years. In all that time, I've learned one thing above all else. You can't control the fire. You can't control the accidents, the emergencies, the disasters. The only thing you can control is how you respond. You responded with courage. You ran for help. You told the truth. You trusted us. Everything that came after that, all the good things that have happened, they started with you." Mia felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I was so scared." "I know, and you did it anyway. That's what makes you brave." She leaned into him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. They stood like that for a long moment, watching the late afternoon sun paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Thank you," Mia whispered, "for everything." "Thank you, Mia, for letting us help." A year to the day after Mia had burst through the doors of Fire Station 12, the crew gathered for a celebration. It wasn't an official event, just a dinner at the Thompsons' house, but everyone who mattered was there. Marcus and Linda, Sarah and her daughter Amy, Jake and his girlfriend, Eddie and Maria, Tommy, still blushing whenever anyone paid too much attention to him. And Jennifer, who had become a fixture at these gatherings, welcomed with the same warmth that had been shown to her daughter. Katie had flown in from Denver again, and she and Mia had spent the afternoon baking a cake that was slightly lopsided but decorated with enthusiasm. It sat in the center of the dining table, surrounded by flowers that Linda had cut from the garden. When everyone was seated and the food was being passed around, Marcus stood up and cleared his throat. "I'm not much for speeches," he said, and Jake immediately called out, "That's never stopped you before," earning a wave of laughter. Marcus smiled. "Fair point, but I wanted to say something tonight. A year ago, a scared little girl ran into our station, and our lives changed forever. We thought we were helping her, but the truth is, she helped us just as much. She reminded us why we do what we do. She reminded us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it." He looked at Mia, his eyes shining. "Mia, you have grown into an incredible young woman. You have faced things that no one should ever have to face, and you have come out stronger. I am proud to know you. I am proud to have you in my home, in my family, in my life." Linda was openly crying now. Jennifer had her hand pressed to her mouth. Even Tommy looked suspiciously misty-eyed. Marcus raised his glass. "To Mia, our junior firefighter, our family, our inspiration." To Mia, everyone echoed, glasses clinking together. Mia stood up, her cheeks flushed, her heart full to bursting. I have something I want to say too. Her voice was steadier than she had expected. A year ago, I didn't know what family meant. I thought it was just the people you were born to, the people you were stuck with. I didn't know that family was something you could choose, something you could build. She looked around the table at the faces of the people she loved. You all chose me. When you didn't have to, when it would have been easier not to, you chose me. And I want you to know that I choose you too, every single day. You are my family, and I am so grateful. The room erupted into applause and cheers. Sarah pulled her into a hug. Jake gave her a high five. Eddie wiped his eyes and pretended he had something in them. Tommy tried to hug her and accidentally knocked over a water glass, which made everyone laugh even harder. Later, after the cake had been eaten and the dishes cleared, Mia slipped outside onto the back porch. The night was warm, the air thick with the scent of honeysuckle, and the stars overhead were bright and clear. Her mother found her there a few minutes later. Mind if I join you? Mia shook her head, and Jennifer sat down beside her on the porch swing. It's beautiful tonight, Jennifer said softly. Yeah, it is. They swung gently, the creaking of the chain the only sound in the darkness. I've been thinking, Jennifer said, about this past year, about everything that's changed. Sometimes it feels like a dream, you know, like I'm going to wake up and be back in that apartment, back with... You're not going back, Mia said firmly. Neither of us is. I know. Jennifer took a deep breath. I just want you to know how proud I am of you, Mia, and how sorry I am for the years I wasn't the mother you needed. I can't take those years back, but I can promise you that the years ahead will be different. Mia leaned her head against her mother's shoulder. I believe you, Mom. Jennifer pressed a kiss to the top of her head. I love you, baby girl. I love you too. They sat there together, mother and daughter, watching the fireflies dance in the garden, listening to the distant sound of laughter from inside the house. It wasn't a fairy tale. There were no magic spells or miraculous transformations. There was just the slow, difficult, beautiful work of healing, of learning to trust again, of choosing, every single day, to hope. But maybe, Mia thought, that was better than any fairy tale. Because this was real, this was hers. And it was only the beginning. The next morning, Mia woke early and made her way to the fire station. It was Sunday, and the crew was just coming off a quiet night shift. She brought donuts, a tradition she had started a few months ago, and the box was nearly empty by the time she settled into her usual spot in the common room. Marcus was doing paperwork in his office, but he had left the door open, and Mia could see him through the glass. He looked tired but content, the way he always looked after a night without major calls. Jake was showing Tommy something on his phone, probably a video of his nephew's birthday party from the day before. Eddie was reading the paper, his reading glasses slipping down his nose. Sarah was in the kitchen, making coffee that was strong enough to strip paint. It was ordinary, completely beautifully ordinary. Mia pulled out her notebook and began to write. She had been working on a story for weeks now, a story about a girl who found her family in the most unexpected place. It wasn't finished yet. Maybe it never would be. But the writing itself was the point, the act of putting into words what she had lived through, what she had survived, what she had become. The pen moved across the paper, and the words flowed. There once was a girl who thought she was alone in the world. She thought that no one could see her, that no one would help her, that she was destined to stay in the darkness forever. But one night she ran into the light, and the light refused to let her go. She found heroes in red trucks and bunker gear. She found a mother who learned to be strong. She found parents who chose her, siblings who welcomed her, friends who believed in her. She found courage she didn't know she had. She found home. Mia looked up from the page. Through the window, she could see the morning sun streaming in, turning everything golden. Jake was laughing at something Tommy had said. Eddie had put down his paper and was joining the conversation. Sarah had emerged from the kitchen with mugs of coffee that she was distributing like a firefighter version of a cocktail waitress. And Marcus, catching her eye through the glass of his office, smiled and gave her a small wave. Mia smiled back. She closed her notebook and stood up, leaving her story on the table. It would be there later, waiting for her to continue it. But right now, she had something better to do. She had a family to be with. And that, more than anything she could ever write, was the greatest story of all. The summer brought changes, as summers always do. Mia turned 13, and the party at the fire station was talked about for weeks afterward. There was a cake shaped like a fire truck, courtesy of Maria Ramirez, and a banner that Jake had made himself that said, "Happy Birthday, Junior Firefighter," in slightly uneven letters. But the biggest change was still to come. In July, Mia's social worker called a meeting. It was time, she said, to discuss the future. The emergency foster arrangement with the Thompsons had been extended multiple times, but they needed to make a decision about permanency. Mia sat in the conference room at the Child Services office, her mother on one side, Marcus and Linda on the other. The social worker, a kind woman named Mrs. Delgado, spread some papers on the table. "We have a few options," Mrs. Delgado said. "Mia's mother has completed her rehabilitation program and has demonstrated significant progress. She's employed, stable, and has a safe home. The recommendation is that Mia could return to her mother's custody full-time." Mia felt her stomach clench. She loved her mother. She wanted to be with her, but the thought of leaving the Thompsons. "However," Mrs. Delgado continued, "there's another option that I want to discuss. It's unconventional, but it might be the best fit for this situation." She looked at each of them in turn. "In cases where a child has formed strong bonds with multiple caregivers, we sometimes recommend a shared custody arrangement. This would mean that Mia continues to split her time between her mother's home and the Thompsons' home, with a formal legal agreement in place." "Like joint custody in a divorce?" Linda asked. "Similar, yes. It would require cooperation from all parties and a clear schedule. But based on what I've observed over the past year, I believe this family has the love and commitment to make it work." Mia looked at her mother. "Mom, what do you think?" Jennifer reached over and took her hand. "I think that you have 2 homes now, baby, and that's not a bad thing. It's a blessing." She looked at Marcus and Linda. "You've given my daughter something I couldn't give her when she needed it most. Safety, stability, a place to heal. I would never want to take her away from that. If you're willing, I would be honored to share her with you." Linda's eyes were glistening. "We would want nothing more." Marcus nodded, his voice a little rough. "Family isn't about blood, it's about choice, and we chose Mia the moment she walked through our doors." Mrs. Delgado smiled. "Then I'll draw up the paperwork. This might take some time to process through the courts, but I don't foresee any obstacles." Mia looked around the table at the 4 adults who had somehow become her parents. It wasn't traditional, it wasn't what she had imagined her life would look like, but it was perfect. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "All of you, thank you." The court hearing was in August. It was a formality, really, since everyone was in agreement, but it still felt momentous. Mia stood before the judge in her best dress, flanked by her mother and the Thompsons, and listened as the legal arrangement was read aloud. When the judge asked if she understood and agreed to the terms, Mia said yes, without hesitation. When the gavel came down, it felt like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. Outside the courthouse, they took a photo, all 5 of them standing on the steps in the summer sunshine, squinting into the camera that Jake had volunteered to operate. In the picture, Mia is in the center, her mother's arm around one shoulder, Linda's around the other. Marcus and Jennifer are both smiling, their expressions full of the complicated, beautiful emotions that come with building a family from broken pieces. Jake later had the photo framed and hung it in the common room at Fire Station 12, right next to the photo from the charity car wash. "Now everyone can see it," he said. "Everyone can see what we built." Mia visited the fire station less often after that, not because she didn't want to, but because life got busy. High school brought new challenges and new opportunities. She joined the school newspaper, wrote articles about everything from cafeteria food to local politics, and discovered that she had a talent for telling stories that made people care. But she never forgot where she came from, and she never stopped being grateful. On the second anniversary of that rainy October night, Mia returned to Station 12 for what had become an annual tradition. The crew gathered in the common room, along with her mother and the Thompsons, for dinner and stories, and the kind of easy laughter that comes from being with people you love. When it was time for toasts, Marcus stood up, the same way he had the year before. "I'm not much for speeches," he began, and Jake, right on cue, called out, "That's never stopped you before." When the laughter died down, Marcus continued. "2 years ago, a brave little girl ran into this station and changed our lives. She taught us that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about choosing to act when you are. She taught us that family can be found in the most unexpected places. And she taught us that no matter how dark things get, there is always, always hope." He raised his glass. "To Mia, to family, to the future." "To Mia!" everyone echoed. Mia stood and raised her own glass. "To you all, for showing me what it means to be brave, for showing me what it means to be loved, for showing me that I'm never alone." She looked at each of them, these people who had become her family. 2 years ago, I was a scared girl running through the rain. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was that I needed help." She smiled, her eyes bright. "And I found it. I found all of you, and that made all the difference." The room was quiet for a moment, the weight of her words settling over everyone like a warm blanket. Then Tommy, in true Tommy fashion, broke the silence. "So can we eat now? Because Eddie's been eyeing that lasagna like it owes him money." The room erupted into laughter, and just like that, the moment shifted from solemn to joyful. They ate, they talked, they laughed, they remembered. And when the night was over and everyone began to say their goodbyes, Mia stood at the door of the fire station one last time. The night was clear and cool, the stars bright overhead. A gentle breeze carried the scent of autumn leaves, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Sarah appeared beside her. "What are you thinking about, kiddo?" Mia considered the question. "I'm thinking about how different my life is now, how different I am." "Good different or bad different?" "Good. Definitely good." Mia paused. "I used to think that what happened to me would define me forever, that I would always be the girl who got hurt, the girl who ran away. And now I know that's not who I am. I'm the girl who survived. I'm the girl who found her family. I'm the girl who's going to do something with her life." Sarah smiled. "You already are, Mia. You already are." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the night. Then Mia turned and hugged Sarah tightly. "Thank you for everything." "Always, kiddo, always." Mia walked to the car where her mother was waiting. Before she got in, she looked back at the fire station one last time. Fire Station 12, the place where everything changed, the place where she found hope, the place where she found home. She smiled and got into the car. The next chapter was waiting, and she couldn't wait to see what it would bring. Years later, long after Mia had graduated from high school and college and built a life of her own, she would tell this story. She would tell it to the survivors she worked with at the non-profit her mother had helped her start. She would tell it to the young people she mentored, kids who had been through their own dark nights and were looking for a way forward. She would tell them about running through the rain, about the fire station with its doors open wide, about the people who chose to help when they could have looked away. She would tell them that courage was a choice, made one moment at a time, that family was what you made it, that hope was never truly lost, even when it felt impossible to find. And she would tell them the most important thing of all. You are not alone. You were never alone, and no matter how dark the night, the light is always waiting. All you have to do is run toward it.